All around the world right now, people are rallying in support of what they believe is Hamas's attempt to free Palestine. But they're misinformed. Freeing Palestine was never the goal of Hamas, despite what the media might tell you. The media is largely mistaken about what's going on, as well as the Islamic motivations of Hamas. So today, we're going to explain the true history and the real motivations of Hamas in their own words. Today, I'm joined by the Apostate Prophet. So AP, thanks for joining us. Now, a lot of people don't even understand who Hamas is. So let's start there. Who exactly is Hamas?
Hamas is an organization that was formed in the late 1980s as an Islamic jihadist movement. It is known as Islamic Resistance Movement, and in Arabic is then shortened as Hamas. So that's where the name comes from. And their goal has been from the very beginning simply to fight the Israeli state, which they do not recognize as an Israeli state, which they call the Zionist occupation, and to eliminate it and to establish one great Arab Islamic state.
People might not be aware that all of Palestine is not in support of Hamas, and that includes some people on the Gaza Strip as well as the West Bank. So with that being said, how does Hamas differ from the Palestinians on the West Bank?
Well, first off, according to the latest data that we have, in Gaza, so in the Gaza Strip, the majority of people, or at least more than 50%, support Hamas. I believe in the West Bank, the support is lower and is actually less than half. But still, when Hamas does something in the name of the Palestinians, people still come together because they represent the Palestinian people. They differ from the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, which is ruled by Fatah, a secular organization, in that their own nature is entirely about Islam. And in their charter, they make it abundantly clear that their goal is to unite the Muslim community and to abide by the laws set forth by Allah, found in the Quran, and all of that. And from the very beginning up until now, they always rejected the secular organizations and secular parties as contrary to what they are supposed to go for, which is an Islamic state and an Islamic community. So that's where they very much differ. And it is known in their name. It is Islamic Resistance Movement.
What are the Islamic motivations behind Hamas's actions that we've seen unfold in the last week or so?
So as stated in their covenant from the beginning, their goal is to abide by Islamic principles and aim for Islamic jihad. And specifically, they cite Quran verses such as that the Muslims and the Jews, or the Muslims and the disbelievers, are enemies, and that it is a duty and a prophecy and a promise for the Muslims by Allah to eventually defeat and get rid of the Jews. So the entire they present this entire idea that Jews are the eternal enemy, and a Jew is a Jew, regardless if there is a conflict or not.
For those that don't believe this and they just believe that what you're saying is anti-Islamic propaganda or Islamophobia, what exactly are the goals of Hamas that are stated in their 1988 covenant?
So in the 1988 covenant, and this is actually very, very easily accessible. I mean, you can just type Hamas covenant or Hamas charter 1988, and you will find it on multiple sources. Some of them only summarize the articles. Others list the entire text, so you can have access to the entire text. You will see therein articles which contain Quran verses, articles which contain calls upon Allah and His Messenger and the entire Muslim community. And specifically in Article 7, you will find something that is very disturbing, but that people who understand Islam and who know Islam are familiar with. In Article 7 of the Hamas Charter from 1988, you will find a narration, a hadith from the Prophet Muhammad, which Muslims around the world know of, which specifically says the hour will not come until you fight the Jews and you kill them, and even the trees and rocks will say, "O Muslims, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him, except for one tree called the Gargat tree, which will not, because it is one of them." So it is a strange and very dark prophecy by Muhammad that is considered authentic in Islam and that Muslims around the world know, which aims at eradicating the Jews. And they state that it is their duty at the heart of the Holy Land to fight the Jews and to defeat them, to kill them, and to remove them entirely from there, to then turn Palestine into a great Arab Islamic state.
Now, this sure does seem to make a lot more sense of what we've been seeing in Israel recently, because it doesn't appear that they're actually just these freedom fighters that are fighting for freedom, given the nature of the atrocities and the crimes that they put forth. So, given that context there, has Hamas accepted Israel's offers for peace in the past?
No. And they also made it very clear, even in their current state, and their current covenant, that they are against a peace process. In their charter from 2017 and also statements around the time before and after, they made it clear that they refuse to make peace with the Zionist occupation or Zionist entity. And they also officially denounce the UN agreements, the Oslo Accords, and all kinds of other agreements which prevent, as they call it, the fundamental right of the Palestinian Arabs to have a right to the entire region Palestine, which they describe from as from the Jordan Sea from the Jordan River to the sea, and from the northern boundaries to the southern boundaries. So they accept all of that as one Palestine, and they state that they want to go for the 1967 borders initially, but their ultimate goal is to take all of the land and to remove Israel from existence. So therefore, they will never accept peace. And Israel was very well aware of that, which is why as soon as they were elected as the government back in 2006, Israel imposed a blockade and said, we are not going to accept this because this is a clear terrorist organization, which makes it abundantly clear that they want to eradicate us. And the only solution is for them to say, we will recognize Israel, we disavow all kinds of violence, and we will recognize peace processes. But they are not for that.
Okay, so Hamas has never had the goal of making peace with Israel, correct?
Yes, that's very clear.
Okay, so now, given that, there seems to be a loss of distinction between Hamas and Palestine all around the world, as a lot of these rallies are gathering around where people are saying where they're trying to flee or they're trying to free Palestine from the occupation of Israel. And so now, with so many people all around the world in support of what Hamas is doing, what do you think that they believe about the situation that's led them to believe that Hamas is worth supporting?
It's quite complicated, and I think we have to kind of distinguish between, the Muslim side that supports them and the non-Muslim side. For example, in the left, we have in the West, we have a lot of left-leaning, leftist, progressive people who think that it is, the right thing to do to support the Palestinian freedom fighters, and without knowing much about the conflict, without knowing much about Hamas. When Hamas does something, they think this is just them fighting for their freedom, fighting against oppression and all of that. And this is all skewed also by this whole notion that was spread over the decades that the Palestinian Arabs are the native inhabitants of that region and that the Jewish Israelis are somehow settlers, which is a very long, very difficult topic that is, however, not really accurate. Jews did indeed, many of them did indeed migrate to that region under the Zionist movement at the end of the 19th century, but Jews always lived there. And the ones that are currently known as Palestinians also lived there, but they were never called Palestinians. Palestinian is only something that began to be used in reference to the the Arab population there in the 20th century. So when people support the actions of Hamas, all they see is an oppressed population that is not allowed to have peace and freedom, and they think, okay, I am going to support that oppressed population because they're not familiar with the details, the intricacies of the entire conflict. However, there is just one thing to point out, which is often the Muslims who support Hamas in this, they are not very much interested in the whole oppression and oppressor part. Among the Muslims, the support for Hamas is rather religiously motivated because you are indoctrinated, as I was and as many others were, with the idea that the Jews are oppressors, they are evil, they are the eternal enemy, and the Palestinians are our Muslim brothers and we have to help them. So whether they are oppressed or the oppressors doesn't really matter in that case.
Okay, now do you think that Israel will ever be able to have peace with Hamas or eventually create a two-state solution?
You always want to believe that there is such a possibility, right? And you want to have peace. The issue is, I don't think that that is possible with Hamas. And Israel very much has had the stance from the beginning that this is not possible with Hamas. And rightly so. If you follow the words of Hamas leaders throughout the decades, you will see that they very often said, we will remove every Jew and not leave a single one of them here. They declared that all Jews inside of the region Palestine should be afraid, and even those outside. Only a few years ago, a Hamas leader said, instructed Muslims in Palestine and around the world to go and kill Jews, and so on. So it is simply not possible to make peace with Hamas as long as Hamas changes their ways and makes that very clear and really makes steps toward demilitarizing or making peace and recognizing Israel. So if there is to be peace, the Palestinian population needs to get rid of Hamas and find a different solution. There are different parties among the Palestinians that are less radical, and with them, steps could be possible. For example, Israel was in a peace process for quite a long time until Hamas took over and messed it all up again. But with Hamas, there is simply no possibility for peace.
You go by apostate prophet, but you're not an actual prophet. But what do you think would be the next kind of stage? What do you think is going to happen from here with Hamas that we might see unfold over the next week, month, year, perhaps?
I don't want to be a very bad prophet here, but so right now, after the horrific scenes that the whole world has seen, where they basically invaded, went through the streets and started kidnapping, shooting, torturing, and otherwise violating civilians, where they killed over 1,000 Israeli people. Israel made it quite clear that this is going to be a war, so they officially declared war, that there will be a complete siege, and that this is only the beginning. So they are also getting ready to really go in and to destroy Hamas. Israel is capable of that, but the downside of all of this is that there will be a lot of deaths, including civilian deaths, and that will be used, and that will be used by the other side. I don't know. There is you could speculate endlessly, but I think Hamas will experience a very, very bad defeat, and for the sake of all people involved, including the Muslims or Arabs or Palestinians, I hope and think that Hamas will be destroyed, disarmed, and replaced with a better authority.
And we're certainly hoping and praying for a peaceful and a quick resolution. Now, AP, thanks for joining. And where can others find you and your work?
I'm on YouTube, Apostate Prophet, and I'm also on Twitter. Excuse me, it's called X now, where you can also find me under the same handle, Apostate Prophet. That's pretty much the two places where I am active all the time.
Now, if you're interested in following this story, make sure you subscribe, as we'll be covering it with other special guests as it continues to develop. In the meantime, check out this video, and I'll see you soon.